It's episode 24 of Chit Chat. Did you ever wonder if there were any games that we didn't like? Well, you wouldn't be wrong, but some of these games might just surprise you. The good news is there's a game out there for just about everyone. Welcome back to Chit Chat. This is episode 24. We've gotten 24 of these things in the bag, almost. We're going to be talking about probably our most controversial topic.
Maybe.
We're going to be talking about games, not that we hate, but games that each of us maybe don't like as much as the rest of the world, or at least a large population. We're definitely in the minority, maybe, of whether we like these games or not. Of course, we've got Ryan, Gary, myself, and Jeremy. Before we get started, we have a winner for the games from last time.
Yeah, Whiz Kids games. We had two of them, Fantasy Realms and Kung Fu Zoo. Anthony Miller, you are the winner. Make a comment below. Get a hold of us. We will send that game to you. And this week we are giving out Mackie Stack. This is from Blue Orange Games. Dexterity game, fun for the family. Just make a comment. That's all you have to do to be entered to win.
All right. Now, to segue away from these great games that we enjoy and we're giving away, we're going to talk now about games that maybe we don't enjoy so much.
Funny thing is, probably a lot of these games are in the top 100. At least the ones I picked are.
Yeah, because they're like...
Well, they're popular.
They're popular, but like either we just don't... It doesn't land with us well, or...
I think it goes
not
without
all games
saying,
are for everybody.
not all games are for every player.
Yeah.
And that's okay, you know?
Yeah,
Is it okay? We'll find out after this episode.
It is okay.
Unless you're picking games I like.
So just to let you guys know, none of us have shared with each other what we're going to talk about. Not that we have long, exhaustive lists, but I do expect there might be a little room for debate tonight.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Maybe.
We'll see.
One of mine's notorious, so it should be no...
Who wants
Well,
to
if it's
start?
notorious,
Well, it should be no surprise to you guys or people that watch the channel.
Start
One of
us
my
off.
games.
Well, then let's
Time
hear it.
Stories is one of my
Oh,
games.
yeah.
And it's really weird too because I really liked, like in the past year, I've really kind of delved into story games, like
played all of them.
more than I ever have before. And I think my problem with Time Stories, and I've said it many, many times to you guys and here on our channel, I don't like the fact that it has that rewind function where you have to replay through that portion of the game
Groundhog
again.
Day effect.
And I think that, and the whole Groundhog effect. And I think the problem with me was that my first experience with the game, I think, was with you.
We played... we only played through once. We didn't finish it. The first, the one that comes, the scenario that
And we
comes
played
with
for,
it.
what, an hour? A little bit over
Yeah.
an hour? And then we got to a point where we just died. Just
Yeah,
randomly
finished.
died.
We ran out of time.
And
Right.
sometimes that's fun in a game. Like, in a video game, that's fine, because you just restart. This, you gotta restart the entire freaking game. And that, to me, is a huge no-no. Like, I want to be immersed in the entire experience. I don't have to go through everything that I already went, especially in a story-based game where I already know the different avenues. Because typically for me, I'm going to go to the same exact avenues, and just instead of picking A, I'm going to pick B this time. Because it's probably the right answer, right?
Right.
So that, to me, was a huge turnoff. Now, I've heard from several people that some of the further adventures in the game are really good. So I'd like to go back and at least give it another shot. And to be quite honest, I've only played through it twice. Like, both of my experiences sucked, though. So I didn't like either one of them. So what do you guys think?
I enjoyed it. The copy we played was my copy.
Do you still own that copy?
No, I don't.
No.
You know who owns it?
Who?
Ryan Schoon.
I do. I have
Before
it.
I even knew Ryan that well, really, he bought my copy.
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and you still own it, and you buy all the
I still
expansions.
play all
right?
of it. I have all of them.
I didn't dislike it, but I ran out of steam with it, and it wasn't a game that I kept coming back to. And after I'd played like the first couple scenarios, and I'd played that one, we'd played plus the zombie one a couple times. Which one of the things I'll say for the game is, at least between those two scenarios, do they call them scenarios?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cases.
They're very different. Yeah, they're very different feeling. The zombie one was very sort of action oriented, where you're fighting and doing all of that. Where that one felt like an old graphic adventure type of game. But I enjoyed the experience, and that's why I've wondered why you haven't been interested in, now you are, giving it another try.
Well, I think the great thing too is about the games now that I've been playing, like the Seventh Continent, and the games like the graphic novel adventures, or even the House of Danger that came out from Asmodee recently. The way that you fail on that, you simply just kind of backtrack just a little bit. You're not going through the entire game.
And maybe if they had save points.
Well, there's no save points in the graphic novels. You just simply say, you died? All right, go back to page 74 and choose something different.
Yeah.
So you're always progressing in some way. But it doesn't have that stifleness where you're just like, you're done. replay through a whole nother hour of
And there is that
basically the
aspect
same
of having
content.
to pull all the cards back, reset the decks in the right
that's
order.
just
Yeah,
not
not
fun.
a fan of that.
I didn't mind that personally because
No, I
I
don't
kind of
mind
dug
it.
the whole concept of like it playing out like Groundhog Day. Now with that said, and I don't know, they may have done this in some of them. I think you would have found it more interesting had we had to reset, but then we were putting in about 11 new cards because we changed the timeline.
That's interesting.
And things might be different now because we screwed up.
Yeah.
And we talked to this guy, and now it's
interesting.
different. That could be interesting.
I'm with you. I would like to maybe try it again, but that game is probably the only game I've ever had an almost flip the table moment.
Really?
With our
Really?
group. Yeah, we got into something where we were just kind of going in a cycle, and we realized we can't get out of this. And I forget, it's been so long, but I forget how we did it. I know other people had gotten into the same situation. You literally couldn't really get out of it, so you had to go and do the cheats, and it was so frustrating after 2 hours and 15 minutes of that, and you're like, we're done with this. And that really bugged me about that game because I like the storytelling games.
That's funny because I love time stories. I've played through almost every one that's out. And
I feel like
just
I can
can't
get
enough
that
of it.
same time stories experience in Unlock, which is another game from Space Cowboys that I feel like
Half the time.
it's concise. You're progressing against a very specific time barrier, and everyone's cooperating together, but in more of a frantic and cooperative way than time stories. Anyway, that's enough about time stories. Let's go on to the next
Either one of
game.
you?
I've got one that I don't want any hate for this.
We're going to give
I'm
it to
gonna
you.
hate you for this.
I don't know in this group, but it's pretty high in BGG, and there are people out there that I know like this is the game for them, and I just could not enjoy it, and that's Mage Knight. Like,
Oh.
so many people love Mage Knight. So many people talk about how it's just such a good game, and I know they've even like re-themed it with like Star Trek and some other. But man, it just was boring to me. Like, it just felt tedious and boring, and like I had no enjoyment. I got to the end of the night and I was like, I wish I had not even played it.
I will say this, Mage Knight is a fantastic game, but it has such an extreme learning curve to it.
Oh my gosh.
That it turns a lot of people away, especially if they're not on the enthusiast side of board gaming. Like if someone's just getting into a game, like say for instance my wife, if I sat her down to play Mage Knight,
Never in a million years.
number one, the theme would turn off, but just the gameplay elements themselves. There's just too much stuff to keep track of. It's got a huge tracking issue.
It's almost like, I mean, it's not an RPG, but it's as intense in terms of what you have to learn. Like that's, interestingly enough, that is one of the first big enthusiast games I bought. And I tried to play it with my sons at the time who were very young, and I was super excited to try this game. And there's a rule book, and then there's a book like for the rule book. Like it's here's how to use the rule book. Like that's a lot to take in. But I actually was recently looking at that online thinking, do I want to get that and maybe give it another try? Because like with this group, I think it would be I would be interested to see the experience
absolutely.
we would have playing. Because
I feel
there's
like-
some smart things in that game for sure.
absolutely.
Like I got to the end of the night and I still didn't really know.
How many years ago was this that you played?
This was a couple years ago at this point.
Okay, so obviously your game experience has changed.
Sure, my game.
since that
Yeah,
time.
I've had.
I feel the same way because I haven't gone back to Mage Knight since it was originally released 10 years ago, maybe. I don't know, 8 years ago, a long time. So it's been a while since I've gone back to play it. But I do remember covering it on Drakkenstrike stuff, and I do remember how complex the game was. And I worry for people that aren't enthusiast gamers. But I'm probably like you. I'd like to go back and try.
They've got
it
a
at some
big
point.
box of it now that comes with like
WizKids
at
is
least
coming
2
out
or
with a
3
re-release
expansions
of it.
and an anniversary
Yeah, I'm always
edition
willing
or
to go
something.
back and retry something and see if my opinion's changed. But
Well, don't
Man.
hold us to it,
I'm
but
sure it
maybe
would.
we'll all go
Might.
back and try Mage Knight sometime.
I just
soon.
remember the tedium.
Live.
That's what I remember.
Live.
Join us as we're frustrated.
We'll learn it in front of you.
Our flip the table.
It'll be a
episode.
5-hour presentation.
What do you have? Gary?
One game that stuck to me right off the bat when we were talking about this topic was Roll for the Galaxy.
I was going to pick that too.
I've played it a number of times.
Get
and
out.
I'm out. I'm out. You bring that game, I'll find something. I'll play Yahtzee over Roll for the Galaxy. I don't care. You don't see enough cards, I feel like. And I don't know, to me, somebody mentioned this the last time I played it that also didn't care for it. They go, can there be a game with too much dice mitigation? Because there's so many wilds that do pop up on your dice. And it's almost like you can really kind of just dictate, if everybody knows, if you have an experienced player that knows what to do, they're going to explore and they're going to develop.
Yeah.
And everybody else will be sitting around trying to figure out the iconography and how to use your wilds. And it wasn't fun. I didn't like either of the plays that I did with that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the one where you can use like any die to do actions, right?
Well, it's
Because I found myself wondering, I was like,
weird
this is
part.
weird, like all these faces.
It
Yeah.
feels very strange, and I will admit.
And how to explain that to people too.
That's the hard part.
It's
I
hard.
enjoy the game. The first time I played it, Alicia and I played it with Jack at IndieCon maybe 2 years ago now. And Jack, his whole family really likes the game. Jack's a friend of ours. And he taught it to us, and Alicia and I sat there. He kept explaining the rules, and both of us were like, we felt like idiots because we couldn't understand what we were talking about. And part of it, what Ryan was just saying, is like, you're using dice, some of them not for what's on their face, but just kind of as a generic placeholder dice or something like. It's been a while since I played it, but it is hard to get your head around. But I not once I did, I do like the game, and you can play it online too.
Oh, can you?
And if you can get some of the more experience under your belt with it, I don't know. I'd be interested to see if you change your mind if you try it online.
No. I mean, Race for the Galaxy is the same way. It's hard to wrap your head around. The thing I don't like about that game and those type of games is they have those player shields in front of you.
Yeah.
And I don't like the fact that when you're rolling dice, someone can just take their finger and change it to another
It's
facing.
too easy to want to cheat in that game.
Yeah, I hate that. Like any of those games that use those, roll dice behind a shield thing. No, forget it, I'm out.
Let's all keep it open.
I know. Roll your dice in front of me so I can see what you get.
This is my turn?
Yeah.
It is your turn.
I like all games.
Yeah,
No. I've got one.
Shoot some ladders.
This is going to be controversial. I'm a little concerned about bringing it up. And I'll caveat this by saying, I still want to play this more before I make a final judgment.
Can I guess?
I know you know what it is.
Villainous?
Yes, it is. It's Villainous.
Interesting.
Everyone right now is talking about Villainous, and I promise you, this is not the sort of anti-hype. I'm not, because everyone's talking about it, I'm not like cynical or skeptical of that. I've played it a couple times now, just a couple, and I want to love this game, and I love so much about it. It's a beautiful looking game. The asymmetry is amazing and fantastic when you think about it, and when you first start playing it, everyone I played it again just last night, and the guys I played it with were playing it for the first time, and they're like, once they start seeing how their particular engine works for their particular character, it's very fascinating and satisfying. I'll still agree with that. But every time I've played it, it just turns into a bit of it really kind of grinds. And it gets to the point where there's a lot of, and I know people like this, there's some players that like this, there's a lot of, oh, he's about to win, everyone stop him. Oh, now he's about to win, everyone stop them. So it just turns, it to me, it feels like it just goes until someone, like last night, all three of us were like, kind of feeling like we just wanted to let someone win. Like, because it just went on for so long, and it wasn't, and people ran into the problem too, where there's some of the characters, some of the villains rely on you finding stuff in your deck, and things can happen where you're like, well, now it's going to be a long time before I can even get back to where I needed to get. The first time I played it, my son was playing Jafar, and the card he needs out of his deck was he'd noticed was on the bottom of his deck because he had another card that let him look through his deck for something. So he realized that the card that was the first step towards his win condition was on the bottom of his deck. So then he was going to have to basically just spend his time burning cards to get there. And then last night, someone was playing the Queen of Hearts. They set up all their wickets, had it all set, took a shot, came up shy, and when they drew the cards for their take a shot card, it was the other take a shot cards that then get discarded. So then they knew they had to burn through the rest of their deck and then reshuffle to even get their take a shot cards again. So I don't know, it kind of draws out a little bit, I think. So counterpoints, anyone?
Counterpoint, I've played 4 games of it now with 4 different characters, and it has not worn thin on me. When I played Jafar, Mike, it's like the whatever card you're supposed to find, the map or whatever. Yeah, it was towards the bottom of my deck, but like burning through my deck to get to that card and playing it and getting the genie, I was 1 turn away from winning when somebody else won. So
all of our games have come down pretty close too.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think
a step away. He won one of the games against us. Even the game that we played, I won directly after a turn that you would have won.
Right,
in
if you hadn't played that sneaky card.
I see that, but I think the simplicity of the game, like the turns are fast. Once you know what you're doing, I think some of the problem you may have that if you've played it a couple times, are you playing with people that aren't typically Magic players, like,
sure.
they'll have to look through all the actions, they'll have to read all the cards. Like, once you start learning those cards,
Well, it's not-
the game burns at a very quick pace. So
I don't think it's the length. I don't mind the length of the game or playing it. It's just the actions that seem to just continually put someone out of reach of winning, and it just turns into a game of stop 'em, like cat and mouse, of stopping someone. Oh, they're gonna win. No, stop them. Oh, this guy's gonna win. Oh, stop them. And then eventually someone falters, and then someone wins.
I think that's the nature, though, of not having a victory point track in that game.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
With each different villain having their own asymmetrical win conditions, I think that's just part of the game. I see your point, though. I mean, I can see where if with the right kind of conditions, if someone failed, like a take a shot on the queen, how it could be frustrating for that player.
It was
to go
very
all the way
frustrating.
back down. But also in the same sense, they have 2 powers and they have 3 power ones. Play your 3 power ones. Play spears on them before you take your shot. Be more judicious with the way that you play your card. So maybe you're not trying to hit an 8, you're trying to hit a 12. And then once you know the deck cards in the deck, they range from 0 all the way up to 4 in that deck, with them scaled more towards the lower end or in the 2 range. So you can start doing the math behind it, looking through your discard, seeing what's there, and start doing some basic deduction on your deck, and make a right. Maybe they shot too quick.
And so,
I mean,
that's a fair point. What I would say, though, is that game to me doesn't feel like it should be a game targeting people who are going to take that approach to a game.
Well,
right? It's a Target exclusive with Disney characters.
But I think it's geared towards adults.
Yeah,
I think this
I
game
no,
is
the
definitely geared towards-
mechanics are, but I guarantee you, there's plenty of families who are going to end up with that game on their table, and there's going to be people upset at the table because it's not a nice game.
But the game, it's not. But I
Villainous.
think
Right. Well, that is the cool
the
thing.
theme of the
You
game.
can explain it away by saying, "Well, you're playing Disney villains, so we're all going to be nasty to each other."
Right.
And I think it's immensely important to tell that to everybody at the table so that everyone can embrace we are going to be foiling each other's plans left and right. Because if you don't explain that, and there are people at the table who don't like that, they'll be frustrated.
I mean, but it does come like into some really cool moments. Like when we were playing, when you were Maleficent, and it came down to one person, me, maybe could have stopped you if I drew.
Yeah.
And I didn't draw a card that could stop you, and it was like, oh man, but like it was a pretty epic win for you because it was like that breathe in moment of like, is he gonna draw a card? Like,
and that particular game didn't go on terribly long.
it was like 30 minutes.
That was a pretty quick game. But the game, some of the other games, the other times I played it, have gone on.
There's 2 things I will say about 2 of the games that we picked is Time Stories.
Yeah, that's
And
not. We love Time
Stories and Villainous. Out of all the games we've picked, they seem to be the most approachable, but they also have a huge amount of design space around them. Like Time Stories can be developed for the next 10 years. I mean, they can go all kinds of different routes with that, and it's such an easy game to play. There's not much to it. Same thing with Villainous. Like, Villainous is fascinating to think about what they could do. Like, each of these characters are completely asymmetrical, and they all play completely differently. So I'm excited to see what the next 2 to 3 years has with this. Like, introducing villains every couple months would be fantastic.
I will admit, like I said, although I'm sour on it a little bit, I haven't completely come down on my sort of position on it. I do want to see what they do with it, and I am, as a consumer, excited about that aspect of it. And I was the same way with Time Stories. If you remember, when I got Time Stories, there's a thing in the back of the book, the rule book, that talks about like kind of how the system works and how you could make up your own adventures. And I was like, oh my god, this is fascinating. I'd love to see what people do with that. And people are doing the same thing with Villainous. There are like people are doing on BGG print and play villains.
That's cool.
Already that they've come up with and how they work and how they work differently.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You guys have any other games that we can briefly touch on?
Well, there's one that I think.
Briefly.
Ryan's
Well,
tone is like,
There's one that I think
okay.
I don't know that any of us like it, but for some reason it's hugely popular.
don't throw us under the bus.
I'd be surprised to hear that any of you love this game, but it's hugely popular outside of maybe like the.
What's the game?
Enthusiast gamers.
What is it?
It's Munchkin, which
Okay.
sells crazy amounts. How many different versions of Munchkin are out there?
I understand Munchkin.
and
I
I
get
just
the
don't-
appeal. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
I would put
I don't
myself in
enjoy it
that
at
same
all.
category. In fact, interestingly enough, I had this exact conversation after I played Villainous last night because some people have drawn similarities between the two in terms of it turning into kind of a grind that slows down and then someone finally wins. The problem I had with Munchkin the first time I played it, and my kids, in fact, my kids and all my nieces and nephews, they love Munchkin. They always want to play Munchkin. And my sons always say, let's play Munchkin, knowing that I won't want to play Munchkin. It's like the only game. But the rules, or lack thereof, the first time I was playing it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This kind of just says, do whatever you want. Like, just have fun with it. And that was a little weird to me.
Yeah.
And that, of course, that's what the kids liked about it, is because it's just character progression. Look at all this crazy stuff that I put on my hero. And
you got anything else?
Yeah, I got 2 quick ones. Okay. One is, I think it's in the top 300. If you pull this game out when I'm around, I'm not playing it. That's Lords of Zidit.
Oh,
really?
That programming game. There's so much, it's so luck-based.
Yeah.
Because your programming can be totally blocked, you're sitting around, and then you get to that in-game scoring, and you get knocked out during the in-game score. I'm like,
it's a pretty game, though.
It's a pretty game, but after an hour and a half, I'm like, what am I sitting around
so
for?
Pretty, and I bought that thing the year it came out at Gen Con. Well, I bought it for this. It came with Seasons promo cards.
Oh, that's why.
It was really the main reason I bought it.
Sold the game, kept the promos.
Yeah.
I did end up selling the game. You and Jack and I played it that year,
bad.
and it was not
Not
it
good.
Was not
Not
what
good.
I wanted. That's a reskin of Himalaya, right?
I don't remember.
I think it's a reskin of a game called Himalaya.
It's a reskin of a bad game.
Ouch!
Yeah. And then the other game I just don't like. I think there's a couple of us here that probably don't care for it. I know you don't. But that's Scythe.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
Somebody's got to explain to me how it is fair that somebody is going to get more turns than everybody else at the table because of the way the game ends. You put that last star out. That's it.
I don't like race games either.
I've never
But there are race
understood.
games. At least everybody gets to finish that final round.
Yeah, I do like it when
just-
people have one more round of table, so I might have finished it, but you sneak in and get a couple
Yeah,
more
it's
points.
just
to win.
like equal turns. Like it should always be that way.
If I was to come up to you and go, hey, we're going to play a game, but I'm going to have one more turn than the rest of you, and I tell you what the game is, you'd be like, I'm not going to play that
Which
game.
one?
Root has that same issue, right?
Does it?
One player. I don't think you could.
It just kind of ends like that.
Is that how it works in Root? I've only played it a couple times.
I don't know.
I think,
kind of, but it's not as bad as Scythe.
Sure, but
It's
it
not
also will
as-
end. It could end with the first player, is what I'm saying.
Right.
It could end if the first
Well,
player.
there's plenty of other games we've played that have
Yeah,
a hard
I'm just
stop
saying-
where it's just like
I'm
that
just saying,
happens, that's
yeah.
done.
But I think the thing about Root is that you go in a specific order for your characters.
Root's not on
That's
our list,
true.
by the way, because I really like Root. I make that very apparent.
Root, you go in a specific order, and so
Yeah.
like the player in the front maybe is a little weaker. Like it takes a little. It's a
those
little
woodland
harder for the
dudes are
player.
not
you know
weak.
the
I don't know if any of
monarchy
them are
or
weak.
the
you know what?
cat.
I mean, Jamie's a brilliant guy. I'd
Yeah.
love to ask him the question.
Why do you
Like,
do it like
why does
that?
it end that
Help
way?
us understand what's the philosophy behind this? Because I'd be willing to bet that some of us would walk away from that conversation and go, okay,
Well,
I get
yeah.
it.
I like
he
viticulture.
just sold me.
Yeah.
You know, I do like that, and maybe it's because I don't know, it's more condensed. But there's something
It's more of
about
a Euro
Scythe.
game, too.
Right.
Viticulture has Euro
And
aspects
that's not
to
the
it.
only thing about Scythe. I mean, there's sometimes I forget those cards that really let you do those special things
That are random.
Yeah,
completely random.
there wasn't
when they
enough
come
of
out.
those.
Well, that's why I was
didn't
really
feel like, and it
excited
just-
when they came out with that
It just
campaign.
I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Rise of
Fenris.
Fenris campaign. I was like, maybe that will fix that. Fix the random cards. Fix the way the game ends. Maybe give some alternate campaign-based in
Maybe.
conditions.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
I don't have any other games
I got one.
specifically. We can talk.
I'll do it briefly.
Yeah.
Dominant Species. I
Really?
played that.
I
I've
love
not
that
played
game.
it.
I
it's
like the game
fiddly.
too.
It's super fiddly.
It's super fiddly. It's also not easy to understand for new players, so it's very hard to teach new players. It also looks like a Christmas tree farm. Like it's not it's not a pretty game at all. Like that it needs a retheme
I think it's a top
battery.
20
It needs-
game too.
No, that's
It's-
true.
it's
It's,
high.
it is
Yeah, it's
one
top
of the
50.
ugliest games I
It
think
is
I own.
disastrously
that you
ugly, but it is a
own.
great
Yeah,
game.
and it's got all those little tiny chits that you have to move around the
Christmas tree
spaces.
farm. That's what it looks like.
So let's if we can possibly transition away from this topic to really quickly talk about some of the games we've been playing, because we've been playing some good games post Gen Con, right?
Yeah, I can't even like. It's just.
You
You just played
Anywhere.
Newton. So you
Finally played Newton. I've been waiting to play since.
And?
I loved it. Really enjoyed it. I don't know if it has unseated Marco Polo as my favorite of his. I need to play it a couple more times, but that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we just played earlier today. We played MacGyver, the escape room game, which
You made a bomb. With a
it was
toothpick and
kind. I mean, there
some
is.
floss.
I don't want to give away spoilers. There is a paperclip that you need to use to solve one of the puzzles, but it's
That's
kind of
awesome.
like
It
those
doesn't-
exits and unlocks.
It doesn't feel like MacGyver. It
No,
feels
but
like
it's-
like an escape room game.
It is,
Yeah.
It's definitely an escape room game with
Yeah.
the MacGyver theme
License
attached
on
to it.
Yeah.
As much as I didn't care for time stories, I'm loving detective.
Oh,
because it's doing everything that Time Stories didn't do that I felt right. You don't have, there isn't a card that says you win. You know, you just have to you have to enter all the exploration and stuff. And even if you don't pass that first or any of the cases, you don't feel like, okay, we can do this better the second time.
Yeah.
And there's no shuffling cards all back and spending all that time. So it's just cool. I love the theme and what they're kind of incorporate with real history stuff. I was like, oh yeah, this is super neat. So I'm really loving Detective.
Cool. I've got a couple games, and you've probably heard of one of them and not the other one, but I'll start with this one. There's a game called Poetry Slam that I think might have come out at Gen Con. I'm not sure.
It's fairly new.
It's fairly new. Alicia picked this up. I hadn't heard of it. It's from Mayday, and we played it with her parents, and it's kind of hard to describe, but you're laying out some cards. One card says that you're trying to come up, and you're all going to have to come up with poems eventually. But you have to write a word that it says, write a word that has the last letter is, and then you flip another card that has the letter. Or this card might say, the third letter from the end is R. So then everyone's quickly writing down a word behind a shield, right? And you're trying to write long words because you're going to score points for the length of your word. And then as soon as you're done writing your word, everyone can grab out, when they're done, grab a tile from the middle of the table. And these tiles are face down, but they have points on the backs of them from 1, 2, 3, or 4 for 4 players. You grab it, you're going to get those points too for this round. But on the other side of that tile is a letter that you won't be able to use for the rest of the game in any of your words. Unless it's in the rule of the word. Which makes it interesting because obviously if you pull the 4-point tile, it's the more useful letters in the alphabet. But you could take the 1 every time and play it safe and get rid of letters that you'd never use otherwise. Then, once everyone's done that, everyone kind of just comes up with a brief little 2-line poem. Just basically 2 lines that rhyme. 2 lines that rhyme, and you're doing that so that someone around the table guesses what your word is. So your poem is kind of almost like a little riddle for what your word is. And then if someone guesses it, you get points, they get points. And if someone guesses it before you finish your rhyme or your poem, they get more points because you want to try to come up with rhymes that you have to, like, people have to listen to the whole one before they can guess your words. So you kind of, I didn't expect to like it, but it was a lot of, we had a lot of fun with it. And her parents had more fun with it than I think they expected because I didn't think her dad was going to be on board for coming up with poems. I really didn't. But he was like the best at the table at it. It was awesome.
That's fun.
And now I can't even remember my second
didn't know
game,
it.
So.
Cool. I haven't played a whole lot. I've been reading a lot of rules. We've been doing a lot of Kickstarters.
I feel like we put a ton of games this week.
We've been playing a ton. Set a Watch, which is a really good game. It's a cooperative game we played.
Thieves' Den was fun.
Thieves' Den was fun from Daily Magic. We played Lockup, which is the new role-player worker placement game. The one game I will mention, which I haven't played, but I'm very excited to play, is the Lord of the Rings LCG app, which is coming out next Tuesday.
Yeah, you
and the collector's edition's coming sometime in the next couple of days.
You just play it just on the app, or is it?
Well, it's just an app-based game, so it's being moved over to the app. And I cannot wait for this game. Like, if you guys haven't played this LCG, it's fantastic, especially if you like Lord of the Rings. So
I've got one more thing to say, and it has nothing to do with what games I've been playing, but I just remembered because I talked to Manny the other day, and I just wanted to make sure everyone went out and checked this out. He's a fantastic artist. This guy has a Kickstarter, and it's not Roxley. It's actually Manny himself who has this Kickstarter running. He's doing graphic novels that kind of tell the lore and the narrative behind Dice Throne, and it looks really cool. I love his artwork.
Art's awesome.
Is probably. I mean, I love Cuddington and that stuff, but his art style is exactly the kind of art style that I love. So definitely go check that out. We probably have some pages that we're throwing up right now because he sent us some to
It's
show,
interesting that, he's doing that. More games actually haven't done that because I think there are a lot of gamers that would like that.
I think we're going to start seeing
you
more
might
of
start
that.
to see that.
Yeah, we were talking about maybe having that as a topic for a future Chit Chat where we talk about where board game IPs are going to, like, people are making movies.
Right.
Settlers, people are making digital games like Mansions of Madness that's coming out, which is not a re-implementation, it's a graphic adventure based on the Mansions of Madness.
There's just not enough of them yet. Not
No.
a whole lot
Right.
of them out
But it's
so
cool
far.
to see that happening,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe a future topic for another Chit Chat.
Stuff Fables, the board, the movie.
Seriously.
Catan's, there's a movie coming out for the
There's
Catan.
a movie coming out for Catan.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting.
And of course, I think there was a movie back in 1985 that was based on a board game. What was that, Gary?
Clue?
Hey!
And last shameless plug, if you haven't watched Player versus Player, another show we just launched, definitely check it out. We had a blast doing it, and these two guys squared off in sort of a trivia showdown.
Trivia
a lot of
death
people
match.
a lot of people we heard from in the comments thought it was going to be these two playing a board game against each other. So if that's what you thought and you didn't watch it, check it out. It's
better than that.
If you like Chit Chat, I really think you guys will like that show.
Gary dropped some Eric Lang knowledge in that.
He
Well,
did.
We're not gonna
I want a
spoil it.
rematch on that.
We're not going to spoil it for you, but yeah, there's a good display of knowledge and lack thereof on Player versus Player. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Chit Chat. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and all of that, and we'll catch you guys next time. Well, that's another episode of Chit Chat in the bag. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out another one, there's probably one right over here in the bottom left-hand corner, or probably your right-hand corner. Whatever corner, we have something to click on. So click on one of these things, and good things will happen.